We've seen a lot of failures over the past couple of years in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but none have been bigger or more embarrassing than the Marvels. And we could all see it coming. We knew from the moment that this movie was announced that it was likely to end in failure for a multitude of reasons. Most importantly, people had absolutely zero interest in seeing these characters on screen. When you combine that along with people kind of getting tired of the girl boss team up movies, a terrible villain, a really weird plot that was just chaotic and messy, it was a recipe for absolute disaster. But some people in the media still found it shocking. What went wrong with the MCU's biggest box office bomb? How could this potentially happen? And again, you had people that couldn't understand how Captain Marvel could make $1 billion, but this movie could only break $200 million. Well, you know, Captain Marvel made $1 billion not because people loved the character of Carol Danvers, not because it was a great movie, but because Marvel marketed it as the movie that you needed to see between Infinity War and Endgame. The biggest movies in comic book history. Infinity War ended on a cliffhanger, which was Captain Marvel. They told everybody you need to see this before Endgame. And at that point in time, a lot of fans believed what they put out there. A lot of fans were invested and bought in, so they did go to see it. Turns out you didn't really need to watch it before you watched Endgame, and we all know how everything has been since Endgame came out for the MCU. But one person who's been pretty forthright when talking about this, who really wants to make sure that some of the blame can't be put on her for its failure, is the director, Nia DaCosta, who is very happy to be used essentially as a big DEI checkbox for Marvel. Our first black female director. We're really excited about this. That's how it was introduced. That's how it was promoted. And probably one of the reasons they selected a very inexperienced filmmaker for this job. Well, once again, she's in the news for saying what she said before. You know, not really my fault. Not really my fault that this movie was bad. The Marvel's director, Nia DaCosta, says the lack of a solid script was one of the issues she had with the film. That's going to just wreak havoc on the whole process. There was a certain point when I was like, okay, this isn't going to be the movie that I pitched. Now, what she said was not just in regards to the Marvels, although that's what basically all the headlines are saying. She essentially said that the Marvels and Candyman, basically two of the only things of note that she's done other than a very small indie movie, that those things didn't have great scripts, as opposed to 28 years later. She's doing the sequel to that movie that comes out in just a couple months, early in 2026. So she was referring to both of those things. Here's the full quote right here. Making the 28 years later sequel is one of the best filmmaking experiences I've had. One of the issues I had with Candyman and the Marvels was a lack of a really solid script, which is always just going to wreak havoc on the whole process. But this continues a trend for her specifically. She's been very open about this. Like, she started shifting blame very, very early in this process about, well, the Marvel process is not what I thought it was going to be. And, they want you to work this way, and I just didn't work that way there. The movie's not exactly what I thought it was going to be. It's not what I envisioned it to be. Really trying to pass the blame. That's kind of what we've seen. This is an interview from months ago as well. They had a date. They were prepping certain things. You have to lean in the process hardcore. The way they make those films is very different to the way ideally I would make a film. So you just have to lean into the process and hope for the best. The best didn't happen this time, but you kind of have to trust in the machine. It was interesting because there was a certain point where I was like, okay, this isn't going to be the movie I pitched or even the first version of the movie that I shot. So I realized that this is now an experience. It's a learning curve, and it really makes you stronger as a filmmaker in terms of your ability to navigate. You can try to do that all you want. The problem is Nia DaCosta signed up for this. She signed up for this movie. I believe that Nia DaCosta is smart enough to know one of the reasons why she was hired, and it wasn't for her vast filmmaking experience. It was because they really wanted to brag about having the first female black director in the MCU. That was a huge point for them. They hammered it home the entire time. I trust that Nia DaCosta is smart enough to acknowledge and know that in her heart. That's one of the reasons she got hired. Because Nia DaCosta, we'll see what 28 years later looks like, but when you look at her repertoire, but when you look at her experience, she did a very small indie film in 2018. She did Candyman, which I believe was written and produced by Jordan Peele, and she did Marvels, right? That's it. Like, and she had another movie that she was making while she was in the post-editing process for the Marvels, and there was big stories about how she was focused more on that than she was on helping fine-tune the last little bit of the Marvels. That is a movie that is yet to come out yet, by the way. Even though it was very important for her to be doing that and doing stuff for that while she was working on the Marvels for Marvel. Now, look, the way Kevin Feige does things obviously doesn't work. Right? We've seen that. We've seen a failure for the Marvel Cinematic Universe across the board, and it starts at the top down. The Marvel way doesn't work anymore. The Marvel process, it doesn't work. They are failing across the board. But when you sign up to be a part of this thing and you continue to see people take little snipes here or there to pass the blame for their failures, the media was out to defend her from the beginning. This is from November 16th, 2023. The Marvels could be a box office flop, but it's not Nia DaCosta's fault. You had this one from The Root. Amid the Marvels box office failure, Black women will defend Nia DaCosta at all costs. The original title of this article, by the way, before it was changed, was Nia DaCosta doesn't deserve blame for the Marvels box office. I personally think there's plenty of blame to go around, including on the person who directed the film. Just kind of the way I feel about it. I think there's plenty of blame to go around. Ultimately, nobody wanted to see these three characters again. That's the biggest reason why this thing was a flop. And it's one of the reasons why when it was announced, the first trailer came out, despite what you might think about like the actresses themselves, I don't think that there was many people out there that genuinely were like, I can't wait to see this team up. That's the biggest reason it failed. But there is plenty of blame to go around, and some people seem like they really want to continue to take these little jabs, to make these little pushes, to make sure people know, well, it's not all my fault, even though I directed the movie. Let me know your thoughts about this in the comments section below. Smash a like button, subscribe to the channel, ring the bell for notifications, share this video out there, and I'll talk to you later.